person who is just now unknown. He came from Sweden, we know so much already, and he is also just now a new president of ECIA. And maybe we heard some words about this practice also. So, Reinholtz came from Växjö, from southern Sweden. He has his own practice and has very different projects on his working table, and we are happy to hear about this more.
Okay, thank you. I'm pleased and honored to be here. It's really a treat to be able to talk about the work I do, and as I'm here also, as mentioned, as president of ECIA, which is, of course, basically the main reason that I will try to connect to what, or at least somewhat, what ECIA is about in the end. But here we go. Okay, no problem. It's a fantastic challenge to talk to people right after lunch, because then we're sort of dozing off from eating, maybe. But then, on the other hand, it's a really good thing to be the first one to talk, because the other ones are, of course, going to be much more interesting and better, and then you can forget what I say. I can give you a short story about that. We just mentioned it earlier. We had another architects gathering in India many years ago, and I sometimes bring a little flute and play a little short tune. And we had some wine that night, and it was on top of the rooftop of a fantastic hotel in Pune, and there was a Indian moon hanging in the dark sky, and the crickets, they were playing, and when someone challenged me, I brought up the flute and played a little tune, and after that some other people got so enthusiastic, so they asked one of their people of the group, there was a Korean group, to go and get her flute. And that was a 1.5 meter long bamboo flute, and she was a professional flute player from the Korean State Opera. So then again, I was happy to start. Anyway, the value of nothing. I think that is a little way to talk about the starting point and the position of our work. It's not that our work is nothing, but it's hard to measure, and everything that is hard to measure tends to be nothing, at least in some situations. Anyway, who am I then? I'm a practitioner. My name is Per Reinholtz, as said. I'm a Swedish interior architect. I have my own office. I was president for SIR, Swedish Interior Architects, once, when we closed down all the separate interior architect organizations in Sweden to build a new Swedish Architects, which contains all 4 categories of architects. Then I'm not counting nail architects and other kinds of architects, but building, landscape, interior, and town planners, city planners. I will talk about our space in between the building and the artifact, the physical framework and the use of it, the life that takes place there? Well, actually, in between almost anything, everything. It's so much related to it, and it's been touched in the interesting presentations we had this morning, the master works that we were presented. So, another thing that I think comes sort of falling behind, in between the chairs, or is left in between when gathering architects, is that we almost never know what is he or she doing actually. We know where they work, and we can spend time on looking up their work afterwards on the internet maybe. But I will give a very short glimpse of what I do, because I am working as a general practitioner. I do a very varying range of work, and that is maybe because I work in a town that is not very big. It's about 80,000 people, and it's a center of an area of many more times that, but still there's not enough of every kind of work. It's you have to be able to work with different things, and you have to like to work with different things. So, just very briefly, I work with banks, interiors of banks. I work with other interiors of offices of various kinds. I draw, just as most other colleagues you do, special pieces of interior. I do not work as a product designer. It happens every now and then, a little bit, but not much. This is an example of a bench for corridors for elderly people that they manage to walk like 15 meters and they have to rest. And the bench can't take too much place because then they will stumble on it. Other things like this, interiors that are somewhat in between domestic and official. This is from the resident, not the mayor, but somewhat like it in our hometown. We've done pieces of furniture there. And I also do a little bit of house architect works, designing a few villas and their interiors. And what I maybe love the most, do some stage set work. This is not the important thing, so that's why I'm rushing through this, because I have other things to tell you. I also teach some at the Linnaeus University. We will touch a little bit of that later. But first, I'd like to comment on the two things that are sort of defining our field of work. The building and the artifact, the piece of furniture. So, are you sitting comfortably? It's kind of strange, because the only ones that should be sitting are gods. It's been the whole meaning of the chair, basically, from history, because it is a sign of power. In all cultures, actually. It is absolutely worthless for the body. It's not good for the body to sit. We should sit like this, you know. I can't do. I fall backwards. We could sit like this, contemplate. Or like this, like Buddha, in a very humble position. And that is the absolute opposite to the power, the signal of power that the seat, the chair is in itself. So still, I think it's interesting that we have more or less the chair as the ergonomically quite bad piece of furniture that we use for reasons that are not really in connection with our physical needs. And as you know, that is because we're not built like to the left, like the teacher told us once upon a time, that we should sit in straight angle. We're built to sit on a horse, so we're built to dominate someone maybe, but this is physically, you know this. But it's a good start, or defining one point of the points of limits within we work. So, and then a comment on the building. We build it because we want shelter, and then we put the artifacts in it. But as the story of the American Indian who, I heard it, who talked with a white man about his strange habit of building buildings, homes. He said, well, you don't want to be outdoors, so you build this house, and then you're uncomfortable in the house or the box or whatever. So you open up, you make openings in it. So you let in the light, and then you remodel it in many ways. So he couldn't understand why we have this ambiguous, this double relation to our buildings. And I think he has a point there. But the reason for building is, which is nice to say to a building architect when you want to tease him or her sometimes, is that we need the interior. We also need to build a city for various reasons, but we do need the interior. But there's a dilemma. Interior architecture and all design disciplines stand with one leg in the natural sciences, where people want to measure. They want to be able to prove, measure, and reassure values that they can trust. And then we have the humanistic field, where we work with values that are less measurable. It's not that they don't exist. They are really possible to observe. We know they are there, but we can't really talk about them in quantities. We can't talk about them in measures that can make the economists, or sometimes not even our customer, satisfied, because they are not sure of the value of these values. So, our work is to carry information over this gap in society. And anyone who has read Pirzig's The Art of Motorcycle Maintenance have had a good chance to contemplate this. Carrying the information between these two positions of awareness. And that is also a sort of a key point of what we do. We are communicating. All our drawings, all our pictures, images, and all our words are basically just something in between the idea and the completed work to help our customers to decide. So we are carriers of information. And we're also in between a lot of other professions. We have to relate to that. And that is also something that was actually brought up this morning in what one of the students was asked, what is your view on your professional situation? And we have to accept that we're surrounded by a large number of people that know all the details of our work much better than I do. The painter knows it better, the builder knows it better, the constructor knows it better, the electrician knows electricity better, and so on. And we have many more than what I put on the screen here. So what is here my situation in between all these specialists? I have to cope with that and know that maybe I'm not a conductor, I'm not a big impresario that could conduct and dictate what the whole orchestra do, but in some way it is relevant to look at it that way, because that conductor knows that every one of the musicians in the ensemble knows their instrument better than he or she. So, I stand in the building with different tasks depending on what I am asked to do. And where we could easily, or in an easy way, divide our work in two fields. What we do for the public field, or what we do for the domestic field. So, let's start with the private. It's nothing that you don't know. I don't know really what I can tell you that you don't know, because you're all professionals and colleagues in one way or another. But what I'm bringing to you is my thoughts as a practitioner, what I reflect on, and what I think is important to carry out the work in between a number of parameters, a number of positions. And here we have one, the understanding of the private life. It's in the work not always that obvious that we see that that people do understand this. And as I think that you've always, probably also experienced that when someone in the audience dares to ask that dumb question that I didn't dare to ask. there's a number of people that are quite happy that it was asked, so I will go it through my way. The private life is private, except for choosing for people what they wear on their body, their clothes. Working with people's homes in one way or another is a very intimate thing to do. We have to have respect for that. And also have to have respect for their money. It's their money. It's not the state's money or the commune's money or society's money or someone else's money. It's their money. And that affects the situation very much. Oh, and then we have the personal preferences. I don't build a monument over myself primarily as an interior architect. Some may do. I think you have also run into situations or overheard discussions where there is a big amount of intention to build a monument over yourself as a designer or an architect. I think, at least, it may sound very good, but I think that if I please my customer, if I build a monument over my customer, then indirectly I will build a monument over my work. Then, of course, I have to choose the customer that I can proudly help in her or his wishes. But we have to respect that it may not be my preferences. It may not be this way I would like to live myself. I like this saying. It's by a Swedish ethnologist, Eva Londos, that said, a home is like a letter you write to yourself about yourself. I think there's an American popular song that goes a little bit like that also. This is a story that has to be told in a way. But we don't do the life that has to be lived in these homes or in these environments. We just do a setting for it. We do a base for it. And we have to cope with the fact that it's going to be changed. When I teach at the Linnaeus University in Växjö and Kalmar, Kalmar may be a little more close to you here in Tallinn, because there has been an immense exchange of cultural values and economical values through the centuries. And in Kalmar and Karlskrona, which are two important towns on the southeast coast of Sweden, you find names of city parts and city quarters taken from over here, and I guess it's probably vice versa. I realized one spring morning I was driving the car. Someone said, this is now many years ago, thank for that, but I still was an adult person practicing my profession, and I heard that someone said that, look at the map reversed. In older days, the sea was not the obstacle and the hinder that we look at it today. It was the internet and the autobahn and the highway that connected everything. The cities and towns on each side of the Baltic Sea, or mostly any sea, were closer connected to each other than the coast city and the inland city, a couple of hours or a couple of days ride with the danger of your life. Anyway, that was a little passage. I work with a professor of Chalmers, Ola Nylander. I borrowed the pictures from him. We talk about axiality in sight, which is a value that is hard to measure, which is a value that is important to work with when you work with interiors. It's set partly from the beginning with a building, but it's one of the lesser known values that we talk about then. And there you have the plan. We talk about movement, being able to move around. This is the same place, looked from the other way. You know this, don't you? You know how much spacier it feels when you can move about like this. These are values that are sometimes left in between. They're not talked about that much, and I bring this to the awareness of the students, I hope. So there we are. Then we have the public, and then you have the market that is ruling their situation. They have to follow the needs of the market. They have their economy, which is a much larger economy. We're not talking necessarily about their money, and then we have the management, which is talking about the company's message to the world around them. This is completely different from domestic interiors, and it is actually sometimes a bit of a problem, at least in Sweden, where you run into people that they want to make their office space their own, and they sort of decorate it in ways that are both unpractical or don't speak the management's voice or the company's intentions, or is working together with a design management of the company. So we have spaces that must work for many people. Reception desk can. I still find it interesting that I run into reception desk. I don't really run into them, but I come up to them, and there's not a place for a person in a wheelchair, even though we have the law on that in Sweden. But it has to work with that. We have regulations on visibility and stairs, and these are all nice interiors, of course, but we couldn't do this right now because here are regulations and rules. So we have to make the first and the last step visible. So we have a lot of things that are in common, of course. There are in between those two areas, the private and the public. Safety and materials, quality, environment, and ergonomics, etc. So let's go back now. We have some eternal values I want to just mention. These are things that can be used as a measure. When you look at something, do you ever ask yourself, when you look at something, do you ask yourself the question, what do I think about this? How many? Most of you, of course. Do you then ask yourself, really, why do I think that? Sometimes we do. But I think these two questions, this is also something that I bring to my students and I bring to my clients it's equally important to ask themselves this, to educate themselves through asking these two questions. But we have some other eternal values. You know who I'm talking about when you see this picture? You know it? Vitruvius. Yeah. He lived 2,000 years ago, and he was talking about beauty, Venustas. He was talking about comfort, commoditas. And he was talking about firmitas, durability. And being an interior architect, this is not less important than for a building architect. And if I should give a short reflection on what I was thinking when I overheard the good presentations of the work this morning, is that it never really got down to that, because it did not really get down to tactile values, volume values, scale values. It was more it was a good but overall point of view on interiors or spaces. And I think that we have to handle these three values, parameters, even down to the very small detail. And this is 2,000 years ago, and it's still valid. I'll do some Swedish propaganda. No, but this lady is still good. But she would be over 100 years old if she had lived today. Her name is Ellen Key, was Ellen Key. She was a Swedish feminist and writer, and she had a lot of thoughts about the domestic interior, how it should be organized, and she wrote books about this and a lot of other things. Her father was a government person, and she was actually writing his speeches and everything. But she said, among many things, which most of her quotes are famous for raising childs and marriage issues and things, but she has written a number of publications on the interior and the qualities of interior. And she has actually put her sign on Swedish traditional, the Swedish interiors that are most valued by most people have clear relations to her values. And over 100 years ago, she said like this. She was coming from a very high class family. She was living in interiors that were just overwhelmingly rich and with draperies and curtains, and it was just too much. And she's talked about this time, and she was not just someone that said something in a time and then someone has dug it up now. She was speaking out about this already then and known for it in her own time. And she is still saying it. You have had time to read? I don't have to read it for you. And she also said, if we choose only one word for good taste, which is today a debatable expression, but let's go for it. That's how she said it. We would use honesty. And it goes together with the one above. And a lot of other things like this. She didn't want that fancy extra stuff just for the sake of impressing, or if it wasn't necessary, she wouldn't like it. And then she had a lot of other ideas that we shouldn't get into. But she was then presenting key values of our profession that are still living. And they might not be as visible as we would like them to be, because we're all caught up in trends and in fashion of different kinds, but we still have to rely on this so it doesn't disappear. She lived over 100 years ago, and she built this house, and she made her interior in her house a little bit like this. So, let's move further. We have the qualities of interiors that are planned, and they don't always reach the goal. Or I run into things like this when people haven't thought through every function. And then Vitruvius would have been a perfect. We could have a mark, a little sticker that put on things, a Vitruvius sticker to put on things that are like this. And the water running from the tap that is not possible to stop. And these are other examples. And then there's another in between that I realized some years ago. You know, the 1st of December, or around then, the Sunday 1st of December every year, we have this show on town where every shop exhibits in their shop window. Are you familiar with, is this a tradition in many other countries? No. Yeah. They exhibit their goods and in nice ways to attract us as visitors going around town. But today we see center of cities dying. And could that possibly be an issue for an interior architect? I realized that it could probably be that if you look at it in the right way. If it looks like this in the center of towns, then these businesses, they sort of help the city center to die. It's not only the shopping mall's fault. It's how we handle the space in the city center. And who is helping these businesses to arrange their interiors? In the best case, it's an interior architect, but probably not. They have shop interior consultants and they have others. But if we handle the city like this, and if we handle the interiors of cities like this, then the city will die, and the center of the city will die, and we have nothing but shopping malls. So, how do we reach to these people? And then there is we have another thing that I was thinking about today when listening to the lectures. There was a question asked to the student, how do you go further with this work? A good work that had a lot of value in certain situations, but how do you get further? And then I thought, some education in entrepreneurship together with education in design disciplines would be good, because we need that. I have been working I worked a few years, first in various offices, and then for various reasons I started my own. And I've done all the mistakes possible to do. And maybe I